Welcome to Old Guy Tech TV News 44 Opinion versus Opinion. I'm Rob Charney, the old guy. Next to me is Jonathan Charney, and in the little box below is John Matajasic. Hey, thanks for watching. Hopefully there's some people out there watching us live. If not, hopefully you're taking advantage of our vast library of many different topics. Some of our shows have been quite enlightening for everybody, including us. So we'd love to have you call. Telephone number is on the screen, 530-621-1210. Hit that donate button so that we can do this again tomorrow. And you know what? I'm going to throw it to you guys. Which one of you guys want to start with a story?
I'll go first.
All right, Jonathan will go first.
This again tomorrow?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
They can watch it tomorrow.
See, in this, in the state of Washington, the decriminalization of recreational marijuana means police budgets are taking a hit. Basically means, according to the article, the police are taking a 15% budget cut on their drug task force. Which, honestly, 15% means they just have to work harder for the people who are actually doing dangerous drugs, which I'm not a believer of weed as a dangerous drug. I do believe it is a gateway drug, but I believe that's more on the personality, not on the drug.
Everything's a gateway drug. I don't like that word. I don't like that term. I think it's BS, but that's just me.
Well, no. Well, what do you think, John?
Well, you know, and I don't know if we touched on this last week. I know that I touched on it in a conversation on Facebook. And Washington, I would imagine, has a similar situation to Colorado. Maybe not, because the sellers have to be growers in Colorado, which makes things a bit more difficult for them. But and on the supply side, after a year's time, they'll be allowed to buy from growers rather than growing and distributing themselves. But when they say that they've lost 15% of the revenue, the issue is, and I don't know what the law is, but it's still illegal to sell marijuana unless you are licensed and a licensed marijuana seller. So if it's your good old felony favor buddy, as it was back in the 60s, that you get your pot from, of which the taxation is making a huge black market for those that sold pot prior to the law, in that since they're not paying the tax, they can sell it for less money. So there's got to be some revenue. They need to investigate the law in busting people that are selling black market pot.
Yeah, well,
that's
okay,
not taxed.
so we're talking about an example here of a state that's legalized marijuana for pleasure. It doesn't have to be medical.
Well, there's two states that have legal recreational marijuana, being Washington State being one, Colorado being the other. There are many states who do medical marijuana. It's the 215 carding here in California.
I didn't think Washington was online yet with that.
It's
but they're going to be.
Yeah.
Interesting situation, Colorado, that I just happened to hear, and it's a little off of what you're talking about. They realized that they had a problem with people who live in the state of Colorado but are going to fly to another state. Mm-hmm. In Colorado, it's legal to have the pot and smoking and all that. So a lot of people all of a sudden get to the airport. It's like the dummies who have a gun in their briefcase and they forget about it, and they head to the airport and they're starting to go through the TSA screening. And all of a sudden they realize, oh my goodness, I can't take this out of the state. So what the state of Colorado has decided to do is set up a bin for people to go ahead and just drop their marijuana in it, so that they don't have a worry about going to another state where it's illegal. I thought, what a perfect opportunity to rip that thing off. Huh?
Is TSA federal?
Yes.
Are airports
Yes.
considered federal property? So technically, they're breaking the law, even bringing that in the airport. They're breaking
Probably,
a federal law.
But the state of Colorado has, I don't know how they're doing it. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's in front of the airport door. I don't know. All I know is that's what they're talking about right now.
I was going to say about the 15% is a lot of, apparently besides the drugs they seize, they also seize money and assets. In some states, Tennessee, I believe, it's completely legal to take everything they have, anything used in the crime. So if it was the house, everything in the house is theirs.
Anything that could have been paid for by the ill-gotten gains, as they say. And
DEA makes a lot of money doing that.
Absolutely.
But the question is, Okay, well, Jonathan, you pointed out that recreational use is legal in Colorado currently, will be legal in Washington very shortly. But the issue is, and I don't know, does this come down to be a state franchise tax board issue? Is it a state tax issue? If you are, you have to be licensed to sell the recreational marijuana, I do believe. As in California, you are licensed to be a dealer of medical marijuana, and therefore possess it, grow it, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know the law well enough to know, but I would think that any black market seller who is avoiding paying the taxation on the marijuana is subject to some kind of penalty.
So we're going to have revenuers for pot.
Well, there still is an issue of federal and state law here.
See, the interesting thing to me is it's kind of like some of the gun argument, because it looks like it's the state, the nullification of the law by the states, because I have a feeling that once the federal government starts seeing all the money the states are getting, I see two things happening. One is the federal government reconsiders pot, or you're going to see a lot of federal agents in Colorado and Washington State arresting people.
The out of Holder's office, they had already sent a memo out about Colorado, and they are not going to go into Colorado and enforce the marijuana laws.
For now.
Right.
What happens?
Oh, sure. Everything's open to a change.
What happens? My question: what happens when, say, there's a 30% increase in state revenue? What happens when the feds see that and they go, knock on the door and go, hey, 20% of that is ours, or we're going to arrest, or they're going to raise havoc. What happens when the federal government realizes that they're losing out on money? That's my question.
What about the law enforcement in the state of Washington when the state of Washington's coffers increase by 20%, and they go, hey, where's our percentage? We're losing 15% here on the because we're not busting, people for marijuana. Again, this is, as we spoke about last, and I try to explain this when I'm in the high school classroom, and the kids go, "Oh wow, man, pot's legal," and I'm going, it's not as easy as you think, because we last week discussed for a moment the fact that THC stays in your system from 3 to 6 months. So if you're swabbed or if you're urine tested, you test positive for THC.
Or if they do the very rare hair test, which can stay in your hair for years.
Years. That's why everybody in the joint, is shaved bald, because they don't want to have any evidence in their hair.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's very rare, but it lasts in your hair, your hair for a long time.
No, I know that. I don't have reason to have a urine test.
And it's any drug. I mean, it can also tell you the kind of vitamins that you're taking. Your hair is made up of basically proteins and things that are not otherwise used in your body. And of course, I think that's where you get sick and die, is your hair falls out, and then you have no place for that stuff to go, and you just toxin out.
Did you, out of curiosity, when you are working for the school district, did they do a piss test with you?
No.
Okay. I was just curious if the school districts did or not.
There is a sign at the district that says that they can.
Now, I know the bus drivers tend to get that.
Well, anybody driving, as anybody with a Class 2 license, you lose your license if you test positive for any drug at any time.
Oh, wow.
And the CHP can pull you over on the highway and test you, or say, come over, so any heavy equipment or semi-driver, bus driver, et cetera, at any point, at any time can be tested, at least in the state of California.
I was just wondering.
See, that's another question, is what's going to happen in some of these states where weed is legal, but it's a federal agency that says you can't do that. I mean, so this is a very sticky wicket.
You won't have a federal job Because
Right.
if they test you on the federal level and you come back positive, it's sayonara goodbye, because it's still a controlled substance on the federal level.
So do you guys think that it'll ever be completely legal?
Oh yeah, but it will take an administration that is much more decisive, and a presidential administration with a much better understanding of executive management, just managerial powers, and dealing with. I mean, yeah, the current administration doesn't want to deal with anything. And, they'll come up for an excuse or forget about it, or, we'll probably go down in history as one of the worst attorney generals in the history of the United States, because he didn't do anything.
Yeah,
Well, he
I
did
agree with
things.
you.
He just didn't do anything that was legal.
Well,
Well, I mean, yeah, from your point of view, I mean, it's all about everybody. Everything's a scandal, and
Well, no,
of course,
I'm specifically
at the
talking
moment-
about. I'm specifically talking about the Fast and the Furious. That's the only thing I see. I really do think that's the biggest mark in his record, because of the lives that could have been lost because of that. That's the only thing. The biggest scandal I
And
see.
I will say to you that operations like that have been going on for time immemorial.
Oh no, I agree. I just
Okay, or we live in an age of scandal. I saw a post by somebody that makes you look like a liberal. That's a friend of mine. And I just said, I forget what it was, and I said, oh, it was about Chris Christie and this bridge thing, and he's going, oh, and I go, you know what? The far right people want Christie as bad as the supposedly liberals do. They don't want a middle-of-the-road candidate for president, and they don't want Christie, who at the moment is, polling as the best candidate to run against Hillary Clinton. He gets the highest numbers and the best response. So on some levels, the Democrats don't want him. On many levels, the uber right doesn't want him. And at the end of the day, I'm not sure what he did.
The only reason why I say that for Holder, and you're right, I guarantee under every president, whether liberal or Democrat of the Bull Moose Party, is just because he got caught. And I think if it was done under Bush or Ronald Reagan or whoever, it's still a black mark. And
Ronald Reagan, you have a thing called the Iran-Contra scandal,
which was a big problem.
pretty big thing, selling weapons to the Middle East to fund an illegal war in Central America. But the United States have been doing things like that since Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah, well, we've been selling weapons to people from time immemorial, so
Full well understand that the country of Panama and the canal district didn't exist. We kind of made Panama happen so we could build the canal.
Well, yeah. Well, like if I remember my history correctly, and it's been a while since I've read this, that a lot of the issue we're having in the Middle East, especially with some of the politics, is because we kind of backed the wrong people.
Oh well, yeah. There are,
we historically backed the wrong people.
and we, if you want to go there, we go all the way back to Prescott Bush and BP.
Oh yeah.
And Egypt and.
I like the statement that
I'm
Gates
not
made in his
sure
book where he said that Joe Biden has never made a correct decision in his entire life.
In his opinion, he's not been correct on international affairs in his entire career.
Yeah.
But that's one of the reasons he's vice president. I really do think because the Democratic Party wanted him, but they wanted to shut him up. Vice president is a good role to do that. They haven't given enough stroke.
Joe, to a certain extent, has a vague similarity to Johnson. He's been around in the halls of Congress for so long that he can buttonhole, he can go grab a hold of somebody. Obviously, not one's political power isn't nearly at the level that it used to be, but he can get some things done. Frankly, folks, and we've discussed this before, although I'm gonna roll back from this. we need, I don't agree with Jonathan and Rob about, the far right point of view on a lot of things. But I certainly don't look at the current administration as being a solution to change or really offering any change. And somebody the other day was discussing with me, well, it looks like Jerry Brown is doing more to get me a job as a teacher in California than Arne Duncan ever did in Washington, D.C. They have just let No Child Left Behind sit there and fester and be wrong.
And, I'll give credit where credit due. That's a Bush-era thing, and I agree with some of the local people I've talked to is, why the hell is there Department of Education at a federal level? Makes no sense.
It was brought in during the Carter administration to try and, unfortunately...
It's stupid.
Unify. No, it's not stupid. Because if you have curriculum and standards in states that are hugely different, right? It's tried to maintain some level of consistency in all states, because every state's got departments of education, and they run the districts. And what the federal Department of Education does is it tries to keep things on an even keel, like No Child Left Behind, which means no true real instruction in the class, but teaching to the test, because that's how you get funding.
Well, that's why I think it's stupid.
Just from an academic and educational level, it has been a total failure. And that's not, part of it is because I can't get a job, because they can't agree. And actually, now they're going to be in Los Angeles. The LAUSD and the San Francisco Unified School Districts are on an exemption from No Child Left Behind. So it doesn't so much apply.
Wow.
Okay, so
wow.
marijuana. we took this
Marijuana and education.
Marijuana and education, yes. So Colorado, yeah. So Colorado is saying you can smoke marijuana. The feds are saying, not so much, but we're not going to bother you. So revenue for law enforcement agencies that use the confiscation.
Calling in?
No, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, darn. They're having trouble with their budget because, hey, they don't get those. A lot of the undercover cars that are used, those are confiscated from drug purchases. Now, so that means they're going to have to spend more time actually going after the harder drugs, and maybe not spend so much time on the low-hanging fruit, which is a good thing. I think we need to go after those people that
in San Joaquin Valley, marijuana, is certainly prevalent, but. The issue is heroin,
right?
Which is on the rise,
crack.
And meth,
meth. Certainly, I guess. I have been in places where they're supposed to be Meth City, USA, and I didn't see. I saw the long-term results on people that probably did for many years. The thing about methamphetamine is it will kill you.
The problem,
when the Grateful Dead says speed kills, which they did, it's probably not good for you.
I think that the main problem with meth is it's extremely easy to make. And I really do think if they, as Rob said, stop the low-hanging fruit, I really do think they could actually stop meth, heroin, crack. I really do think if they've solved that problem, it might make a bigger impact on society than stopping weed, because the only thing I've ever known weed to do was make people have questionable food and entertainment choices.
And extreme periods of leisure.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I can tell you that, I know people that work under the influence of marijuana and do quite well. It takes some of their edge off, or put some of their, as George Carlin used to say, he would write after he quit being habitual, he would write a bit and then, and then go back and take a couple of hits and kick it up. It's a perspective thing. I just don't know that, we'll see. Obviously, the idea of making things non-criminal first and now legal in society, as I've said to the kids and I've said here, it's much more difficult than one might think it is to do this effectively.
Well,
And if you don't think the law out and you just go, well, we want recreational pot. Okay, then did you really sit there and cipher out what that means?
the craziest thing, if you think about it, it's really been since the 60s. I mean, as far as the first time I ever read people really wanting it free to do what you want, it's been 40, 50 years. And people have been trying to do that since then, to get it free. I mean, that's a long time legislatively, and societal change is enough for people to say it's not that big of a deal.
The smoking of pot was revolutionary in the 60s. It was one of the things, oft times when people did peaceful, nonviolent demonstration, they'd smoke pot to add in, and I'm going to sit here and smoke a joint.
Marijuana, the laws against marijuana smoking, actually, I may be incorrect, but I don't believe they actually outlawed marijuana until either the late 40s or early 50s.
It was actually LSD. It was 1930s, reefer madness, when the federal laws came down on marijuana.
Yeah, the weed.
I thought,
LSD was outlawed in the 60s,
okay.
Early 60s, if
Right,
I believe correctly.
Right. Well, at one point, marijuana was not an illegal drug either. So,
in the 20s, in the roaring 20s, you could, during Prohibition, you could smoke pot but not drink liquor. That was a ridiculous time, The only time we've had to change the Constitution twice, once to make drinking illegal and once to make drinking legal.
And I still think, and I knew a guy who at one point allegedly had the highest THC level in El Dorado County history when he got arrested. I think weed does a lot more for you than turn on, drop in. Was it turn on, tune in, and drop out?
And that was actually LSD.
Mm-hmm. Which is considered a hard drug.
With Tim Leary.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is. It will be an evolution of, legal marijuana and how it works and what we do about it and how we manage it, et cetera. When we come back to Eric Holder and the current administration's inability to function as an administrator, we could go on to one of our other topics, which is the internet neutrality.
Yeah, net neutrality.
Now, before we start, I wanted to, I think we should explain what net neutrality is, because unless you're a geek, nobody really knows what it is, because it's a buzzword that the media has very, very, very downplayed.
Well, it's it's odd. Why don't you explain it?
Well, I think that the best descriptor I've ever heard is net neutrality is platform agnostic. It's turning the internet into just bits. You pay for usage and you pay for that access. So you pay for your ISP, and that's what you get, and everything is, you don't have to pay to go to Google, you don't have to pay to go to Netflix, and that's just to get to Netflix, is that?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually what it means is that, you see, it's a complicated issue when you really get down to it. What I think it is that there's companies out there that say, hey, all these people are getting over to my site for free. I want them to pay. Okay, so how do we do that? It's like taxing stuff. So many sites, Wall Street Journal, for example, you want to go read an article in the Wall Street Journal. It lets you read a section of it, and then it says if you want the rest
paywall.
of it, you have to pay. So it's a paywall situation. But at least it's free to get to them. What's happening is, without net neutrality, you could get to a point where you hit a wall. In other words, I want to go to Google, look something up, and of course they're not going to do that. Google's on the other fence, but Google would say, okay, so if you want to get to my information, you are going to have to pay $10 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that could happen to every website in the world,
and that would
if
be,
we don't keep net neutrality.
Yeah, that would be like the ISP charging you $10 or Google $10 for every Google user to get access to it.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like what I experienced. I actually have made this reference many times. 25, 30 years ago in Los Angeles, on PBS, a program talking about in the future, it's going to be all about information. Mm-hmm. And if you can, the more dollars you have, the more information you can afford. The fewer dollars you have, the less information you'll be able to afford. So so ignorance is bliss, but ignorance is a problem because who reads a print newspaper?
Yeah.
Anymore.
Find one.
But the New York Times is the same thing. Mm-hmm. I not only, if I want to read something on the New York Times that's at Chrome or at HuffPost or whatever, they then solicit you to, well, you want to subscribe. Then they send me email, right, because I had to give them their email if I wanted to share it or send it to someone. And then they're constantly saying, oh, what a great deal. You can have the New York Times online for part of my problem is I don't read on screen as well as I do on paper, mm-hmm, or on a Kindle, something that morphs paper for me. My eyes over, the history have come to that contrast resolution that comes with a black and white
screen
page. And although I am developing a way to do speed reading online with the scroll, it doesn't satisfy my soul. It just gets the information into me. But net neutrality, to a certain extent, fits this model, that you will no longer be able to just go out on the net and look at what you want to look at and read what you want to read and get the whole story, like you said, Rob, when the Wall Street Journal was, well, here's a treatment, here's a I'm trying to think of the word. Here's what it basically says. Now, if you want to read it, you need to subscribe. You need to go through the paywall to read the whole thing. Right. And personally, I have problems with that and quote unquote news. Mm-hmm.
Well, I wanted.
They're generating, their content, and they want to get paid for it. A lot of newspapers now, if you want our local paper, for instance, if you want to get the online version of the paper, you have to subscribe to the paper, which I can't figure out that mindset. But
I wanted to say, because I still think if people don't understand why this is a big deal, is because here's kind of a historic reference for it is the internet today is basically like when the invention of the printing press. I mean, it's that revolutionary where everybody has access to anything. Because without the printing press, you would have never gotten Poor Richard's Almanac. There's a lot of books, a lot of information, even the Constitution of the United States. The internet is really the first time that anybody worldwide can have free access to information. Unfiltered, unbiased, unchanged. You get what you see. And that's how important the internet is.
So internet providers like Verizon, and I think Verizon is the company that actually sued on this regulation. Companies like Google and Netflix, what their fear is that the internet providers will begin to charge them more for the heavy use of their sites by customers. So, and
it will.
And that's the issue. And I have to agree with Google. I mean, they already pay for huge amounts of bandwidth so they can provide the content that we all have. And now they're going to have to pay again. I mean, come on.
Well, and we've discussed this previously as well. The fact that things that used to be value added to get you to do business with that bank or that store or that whatever, hey, we'll give you a piggy bank. Hey, your checking account's free over here. Mm-hmm. That word free is leaving the conversation at a rapid rate. Because we've decided to charge a fee, a usage, and the thing of it is that we're generating dollars on things that have no tangible value. And we're
if there's a buck to be made, somebody's trying to figure out how to make that buck.
the MBA graduate is figuring out how they can charge us, yes, and get
Yes.
away with it without, armed revolt in the street. And it makes me crazy because we're getting, how many bank services did you used to get for free that you now get charged for?
Well, we're basically the frog in the old, the old argument.
Our show is a good example of what free really is all about. I mean, we ask for donations. We get very few, but we're still trying to, do what we can here. But yet, we want to bring our news to the viewers out there that is not mainstream, and an opinion that's not mainstream, maybe. And that's in jeopardy with this situation.
Oh, believe me, yeah. Rob is already paying for the bandwidth to be able to do old guy tech TV, whether it be Jonathan's film critiques or our opinion versus opinion, or an hour with the sheriff in the county there. All things that, to whatever level, have value and meaning and should be there. In a quote-unquote free society, we should be free to communicate ideas. If net neutrality goes away, this will not be free. And we were discussing this before we went on the air. Under the Bush administration, there was a ruling on net neutrality. And what this judge did is basically said the FCC has blown it on the way that they want to administrate it, so I'm throwing the doors open until they actually sit down and learn how to administrate it correctly and use the rules that are in place to keep net neutrality.
This is basically, like trying to go back in time and stop the internet. I mean, this is ridiculous. There should be revolts. I mean, the way we handle internet in general. I mean, we're already 15th to 20th place on the internet. As far as speeds,
available bandwidth, it's ridiculous. We're not even in the top 10.
And if anybody knows our history, we invented it. I mean, we did it. Nobody else in the world is responsible for the internet but us.
Al Gore,
Al Gore invented it.
Well, it's.
No, you're right. You're right about that. And I'm just going to say just a little something on this, position on the internet speeds and bandwidth. You've got to remember how big the United States is, and when you take in all the rural areas of the United States and you put it into statistics and say, okay, well, United States 30th in bandwidth, it has to do with the fact that we're so spread out versus, like Italy.
But
okay,
but it also has to do with the fact that you got
Austria,
ISPs that don't. You also have ISPs. You also have ISPs that don't care. They really don't care to upgrade speeds or bandwidth. I mean,
the big boys. That's right. It's a dollar and cents thing.
I really think we should make it like electricity. I really do. Turn it into a utility, because that's what it is now.
Well, the problem is, if you do turn it into a utility, Jonathan, we have the argument, and we have the situation in, again, something we've discussed before, that public utility or a private utility.
Public.
But we don't have public utilities anymore.
Well, see, that's the problem, because I was thinking if we make it a public utility, then it would be responsible to them to increase service, to do what they can, because private utility is basically what ISPs are now. They just don't care, unless people like Google, who have enough dark fiber that they could run cities, which they're doing, by the way.
Right.
So that's the issue. And because of that, there's ISPs that are spending tons of money realizing that Google's eating their lunch.
Oh, yeah. Time. There's no doubt about that. And Google just bought something
Nest.
A day ago.
They bought Nest recently.
For some, the B word always comes up with money now in tech things. There was a lot of billions of $2.3 or $2.4 billion, and I have to admit my age. I don't know what Nest was. I don't know what it does. I probably should, and I probably will.
It's a little geeky.
The best description for Google is they're an advertising company that runs a search engine.
Well, and I will tell you that I went and bought something I had before. I bought a phone owned by made by Motorola, which is assembled in the United States. The components probably come from South Korea. And I will tell you, in terms of my phone, it has been a huge improvement to have a Google-based telephone that has as many voice commands and maybe better voice commands, I don't know, as an iPhone.
Well, I mean, in all honesty,
this thing identifies when I get in the car, so I can not ever have to pick the phone up. That's what I don't want to do.
There's some technical reasons why Apple was really late in the game. There was something called Goog 411. Google's been working on voice commands for a long time, and they have enough brain power that they could have focused on that. So, because Siri sucks. But Google's been working at it for a long time. Apple was buying companies to get it to work, and Siri's awful.
I don't have opinion one way or the other. I'm not an Appleite. I
have an iPhone.
Generalist.
I have an iPhone. It sucks. It's probably the useless piece of technology I own. And I love my iPhone, but Siri's a joke.
Being a verbal kind of guy, I appreciate the fact that I can go, I could right now, my phone is sleeping, and if I said the magic words, it would come alive and say, "What do you want me to do for you?"
Yep.
Was that the OK Google?
Okay, Google. It just did it. Because it's sitting next to me, so it realized I didn't mean it. Go away now. But yeah, if I say that, it lights up even from sleeping and says, if I want to text somebody, if I want to call somebody, if I want to write an email to somebody, it will do all of that for me.
So can I put my tinfoil hat on now and say the NSA loves that?
Well, did you also read the article, and I didn't have time to read it all, that the NSA can manipulate information in a computer that is not on the internet?
It's was it part of that? Was it Van Hein freaking? It's where you can actually tell, without even being physically connected to the computer, just by the RFF and a few other things. Look it up. It's Van something freaking. It's scary as hell.
Is that right? I hadn't heard about that.
There's an episode. There was an old TV show called Numbers, and one of the episodes they do it. Take a look. It's amazing and scary.
The Numbers actually became Persons of Interest. But Numbers was a really interesting show.
Yeah, I like that show. I like Person of Interest too.
Because it's the NSA. You're being watched everywhere all the time by someone for some reason. In Persons of Interest, hopefully, a very entertaining show, and they've gotten more away from reality and more towards fantasy entertainment. But television amazes me. I didn't know there's a I can't, the name will come to me, but it's a show on Showtime with the guy from I can't remember.
What's the show about?
Basically about a completely dysfunctional family in Chicago. Shameless is the name of the show, of which my friend whose home I'm at right now watches avidly, and I'm going, the fact of the matter is, as crazy as that damn thing is, it's probably closer to real life.
I have a question for you, and this is
than a scripted reality show is.
There's no such thing as reality in reality television.
Yeah, did you think that Phil was really going to get in trouble? I mean, season number 4 was already in the can, so they either had to throw away the entire season, and it's now the highest rated show on cable TV, so...
What, Shameless?
No, Duck Dynasty.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Do we talk about that? Or do you want to talk about that?
Duck Dynasty?
Yeah.
I don't care.
Well, because
it is the hot topic.
It's slowing down.
My favorite
covers acting badly and loving God.
See, this is my opinion, and this is why I find it funny, is he's been known to do that for years. A&E knew what they were getting, because if I have an idea of these people, they're unabashed Christians, and God bless them. I love that. They knew what they were getting into, and they did. A&E did it anyways. A&E knifed the baby, and almost lost their shirt because they thought they were doing the right thing. They have no idea the audience who watched that. That is the most amusing question.
The censorship people thought they were doing the right thing, and then the marketing and the money people stepped in and said, that was fine. We got plenty of publicity. It's guaranteed to put Duck Dynasty's ratings up in the next 2 seasons. Now, go take your political correctness and sit in the back row.
The reason why I loved it so much is the news reports around. You had 4 channels basically saying, hey, if you do it, we'll pay you this much per episode. We'll double this. A&E was in deep trouble. Very deep trouble.
As soon as it came out, it was just like, okay, the highest rated show on cable TV. You're going to suspend Phil. That means, okay, we're going to start bidding for this show.
Yeah.
It would have gone to the highest bidder. There's no doubt about it. And that was the whole issue. They probably made an even stronger deal for season 5.
And I love...
A&E's probably paying double bank.
And I love the family's comment. The family's comment was basically, without Phil, we're done. We're walk out. And A&E can't really threaten them because these guys are billionaires or billionaires by now. So basically, okay, talk to our lawyers. We're done.
Well, here's the thing. If Phil, the genius behind Duck Dynasty is Willie, not Phil.
Oh, yeah.
Phil is the guy that invented the duck call. He got a nice business going out of that for a redneck living in the swamp in Monroe, Louisiana, a place where I have been. One of the interesting places I have been in my life. Yes, you're right. They knew that, and I mean, Turtle Boy and Axeman, and I mean, I have a friend that lives in Louisiana, and he came out to visit, and I said, you're the only guy in Louisiana that doesn't have a reality show. Give me a break.
And don't forget about Red Jacket Firearms.
Yeah, I have not seen Son of a Gun. I have not seen some shows that I liked. That were on cable previously. They have not been back.
Sons of Guns basically got the axe more or less because of the Colorado thing. It was a political, more or less. It was a political correctness move. It ended a little after the fact, but it was more or less a political correctness move because Discovery Channel was worried.
The movie theater deal?
Yeah, it was Colorado. It was Aurora and the other one. I think basically they got a little uncomfortable with firearms being on television.
What happened to the one with the guy in Louisiana?
That one, the American Guns was the one that got canceled right after. That one probably, it wasn't doing as good, and it turned into more of a drama instead of guns. And I think their audience
into the son-in-law and the thing and the stuff and the guy and the.
I think it was the audience got tired of it, and Red Jacket's reputation was starting to get out. And I really do think Discovery Channel was getting uncomfortable with firearms. I think that's what it came down to.
Well, yeah, I mean, because you may not get firearms legislation, but you're certainly going to see media.
Yeah.
Right? Because of the people in media are going to go, well, we're going to take it off our network. Be that right or be that wrong. I personally don't care one way or the other. It upsets me and I was very, very surprised that a friend of mine who has been in the last year was a national event announcer for the NHRA. You have seen him on Velocity. You have seen him in many places. The guy is an amazing car guy. Came out with a stance against gun violence. On Facebook, which, believe me, from the people that do those things, I mean, the pile of crap is mounting. I mean, ad nauseum. And I was surprised, and I won't say his name, that he did that. He's got more balls than I do.
Well, I think I do think, and I don't know how you would do this, but I do think you could go against gun violence without being anti-gun, because a guy who is probably a bigger enthusiast than a lot of people, I'm totally against gun violence, but on the other hand, I think I should have a fully automatic weapon. But I think if you're not careful, especially with the audience that loves racing, you're going to lose your job.
Yeah, I just was amazed that he had the balls to do this, because it's like, putting the noose around your neck and jumping off the chair. I'm interested to see. He's a low-key guy, but it's going to, I lost my job because I criticized my employer and nothing I said was untrue. Right? It's just, thou shalt not criticize the guy that runs the track.
See, I think that's...
Your father knows me long enough to know after about 25 years I had probably had enough of that.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a business owner problem because as a guy who... I love criticism because criticism gives me the ability to see things that I don't see. It's something I learned in drafting. In drafting, you have something called red lines. Red lines are mistakes you made, and you have people go over it because your eyes will always go to the mistakes you notice. So by having somebody go over it, i.e. criticism, it helps you see things that you can't see, and it helps you improve in your job. Or, in that case, have a racetrack that's not doing very stupid things.
They're being rewarded, but I mean, I had somebody contact me from that racetrack that wants to leave their employ and needs letters of reference, and I said, well, certainly, I have no problem with you doing that. Everybody knows what the situation is, but it's kind of like owning guns. They may not be happy with the way track management runs their track or treats them, but racing is just... If you are a racer, you are a racer. If you're an adrenaline freak, you are an adrenaline freak. And nothing will take the place of going from 0 to 170 miles an hour in 7 seconds. You can't get that anyplace else. And if you are addicted to that form of adrenaline, you are a racer, and you will put up with a great deal.
Yeah.
To be able to do that.
I also think a little bit is, at least for the management and even the Duck Dynasty stuff, is part of it is a guy who does stuff like that for a living. You got to pick your audience, and you got to know your audience. If you're NASCAR, it would be better for NASCAR to be pro-gun than anti-gun, because a lot of rednecks, a lot of country people, a lot of conservatives love racing. And if you would go against that, there's a possibility that you're no longer going to be the number one sport in the United States.
Well, it's far from the number one. They're off 42% in their viewership and attendance.
Oh, wow.
The NHRA is off 48, and you can't even talk about TV viewership for the NHRA because ESPN, if you wanted to know what the definition of a redheaded stepchild, it would be any NHRA broadcast. I mean, it gets bumped for collegiate women's softball. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
But it does, yeah.
But the NHRA broadcast will be bumped for just about anything. If they had the jumping frog competition in Calaveras County, I'm sure that they'd bump the NHRA.
Poor John Force.
Johnny Force, Ford, at the end of 2014, Ford no longer with him in the Castrol. I mean, they are leaving their standard sponsors in droves. And somebody mentioned that the Circle K is the sponsor of the Winter Nationals. Well, but Circle K sponsored, the IndyCar. They were, I'm losing my mind here. They were the Italian guy, come on, that drove open wheel in Formula One.
We all lost our minds here.
No, Schumacher is still in a coma at the moment.
Yeah.
But gosh, I can see his face and I can't think of his name. His sponsor was Circle K.
Yeah.
And certainly, people that work in the garage and work on their cars and get their hands greasy buy a lot of products, put a lot of money through the doors of Circle K, buy diesel for their trucks and gasoline for their car at the Circle K. So.
Sure.
It's not castor oil, but it certainly is someone that is involved with their demographic.
And that's smart. It's all about picking the people. It's picking your audience.
Mario Andretti. I apologize to Mario for not thinking of his name, because one of the great guys of all time. I mean, he did IndyCar and he did Formula One successfully. Not many have been able to do that.
Now, I have a question since we're coming up on 10 minutes left in the show. Imagine 10 years from now, and one of the things we've talked about today, what do you think will happen? Whether it's marijuana, whether it's education, net neutrality, politics, what is the one thing do you think is going to happen or that you see going to be a problem in 10 years from now? Because to me, I think it's going to be, I really do think marijuana is going to come to a head far as the federal government, I think, is going to crack down.
And my answer to your question is, it is so difficult under the current political situation and the lack of leadership in Washington by either the president or the Congress, the number of old school legislators that are retiring because they realize they don't fit. We really stand on a precipice as to what direction we're going to go on a lot of things. I think net neutrality, that's a matter of dollars and cents. Education is, you have to step back and look at us in comparison to who we're going to be competing with in the global market. And boy, how do we better get our educational act together. I mean, already, we're not even in the top 5 countries in science any longer.
God, depending on my generation, everybody is special generation. Dear God, this country is screwed. What do you think, Pops?
Well, excuse me, I've been a little absent here. I'm just really tired. 10 years from now is a long way out, and as you know, new technology sprouts out every day. There's something new coming out, and so to even begin to predict what's going to happen in 10 years from now is next to impossible. I think we're going to see, technology-wise, I think you're going to see things closer to the Jetsons than not.
You mean no minorities?
Yeah. No, as far as what technology is going to do. John didn't know about Nest. Nest is a company that has developed Wi-Fi capable controllers for your heating, your air conditioning.
Smart thermostats.
Yeah,
very smart.
Smart thermostats, smart doors, the ability to lock your door remotely. They're a big comer in the market, and that's why they got bought up.
You mean where the cable companies are now, and what used to be a phone company are offering you security at home?
Yeah.
Getting security from an internet provider or a phone company is very funny.
I think this whole idea of privacy in the situation with NSA is going to continue 10 years from now. I don't know that it's going to get any better, any worse, whatever it may be. Snowden is either a hero or a bad guy, depending on your point of view.
I want to talk about him again next week. I think that's another thing we should discuss, because the things that have been happening lately are very fascinating.
And folks, I just want to add that we would love to be decisive about things that we say, but Rob and I, having the old guys there, that at least we're old guys that realize, man, this is going so fast. We've already been overwhelmed.
Yeah.
What we imagined it was going to be and what the reality is now is very different. I will tell you, in 10 years, Jonathan, I won't look this good, and I may need a drool bucket or not. Whether I have dementia or Alzheimer's 10 years from now, I hope I don't. I try to do things to keep myself sharp, but, reality is reality as to what may happen to your facilities over time.
Right.
It is so difficult today, and we are so lacking in decisive leadership on any level except business, corporate, people that do things for profit, make products, and decide technologies are probably the most decisive people around. And we can't rely on political leaders to decide things anymore, and I don't know if that's ever going to come back.
See, I don't know if I would say decisive. I would say we're missing a unity. When my grandfather came here, a lot of the people would be, it's like, okay, now we're Americans, let's try to fit in, let's become Americans. Keep our cultural heritage, but try to blend in. I really do think that the thing America is missing is a cultural unity, even in politics. You don't have to agree with me on politics, because, but I don't care, but we have to agree to disagree. I think a cultural unity and American unity is the one thing that's missing. I think that's why we don't have the leadership, is because it's everybody for themselves. It's hard to unite people like that.
Independence, the First Amendment, is a dangerous thing. I made a post yesterday because somebody put the thing, we want our country back. We want to get the Pledge of Allegiance back in the schools. And I answered it like I always do. Every day I am in the classroom, we stand up and we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I have more participants now than those that would participate when your father and I were in school. And there would be people that, and I say the same things to people. I go, you stand. If you don't want to recite it, that's entirely up to you. The fact is, we're saluting the flag. If you are a member, if you're a participant in this society, you have to salute the flag. And then I have to say, it's required by California state law. And believe me, the Pledge of Allegiance in the state of California in a classroom is done pretty much on a daily basis. So, that may be... People pick out, we are now so fractionalized that people pick out their own little arguments, their own side of Americanism that they want. And you're absolutely right, Jonathan. We are not unified in what it is to be an American anymore.
But unity is not born out of a 50s era conformity. It's born out of, I really do think, just agreeing to disagree. I may hate your opinion, but hell, you have the right to say it, and I'm offended to say it, And I think everybody, and the left does it, the right does it. Everybody says that to be unity, everybody has to walk in lockstep, and that's dangerous. Because if you historically look at it, it didn't work well for the cities, for the people that did that.
Well, and when you look at things like the Goodyear strike in France, I mean, they basically took the executives hostage and started to burn other countries will go on a general strike if they don't like what's going on. We don't do that anymore. In other words, even in the Vietnam era, it started out being, we're in war, we're Americans, that's okay. And then it went, no, this one's not WW2. This one's a little bit different. And that started to somewhat change things. But the fact that we are all citizens of what can be and has been the greatest country on earth, you're absolutely correct. We're losing sight of that. And that we need, being an American is not a foam finger that says we're number one.
And
but it has become that.
I want to add that, protesting's fine. I don't like protesting going to violence. I refuse to think that violence in the midst of a protest is change for the positive, because I've always believed the moment I resolved to violence, I lost my cause.
But when the violence happened, whether it be in the civil rights movement or the Vietnam movement, most of the protesters were, like Gandhi, in a non-violent protest.
Yeah. Well, that's
right? And then when the cops, when the government comes in and starts spraying you down with hoses and beating you with clubs and dragging you away, is when the people in general and their sense of patriotism or fairness go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That cop, that whatever, is me. And he's dragging this guy that isn't doing anything except saying, I don't like this, away and putting him in jail.
See,
I don't think that's right.
See, that's what I meant, is the cops resorted to violence. They lost their cause. Whether I agreed with it or not, the people who denied violence were in the right, because they were doing their legal rights and not hurting anybody.
We talked about, and I've been a bit absent in this show. This has been the Jonathan and John show today, but we take the whole idea of civil disobedience to a point where, we want it to always be violence-free. Martin Luther King brought that whole issue during the civil rights situation, that this was peaceful demonstration, yet it still is civil disobedience. It's not marching lockstep. It's not Germany 1930s. These are the things that make our country great, is the ability that we can do a show like we're doing right now. And we can talk about a lot of different things. And at 18 seconds to go here, I'm going to kind of wrap the show up a little bit with maybe what we'll talk about next week. There's a couple of things that have come across my desk that I really want to investigate before I come out and say it. But I want you guys out there to think a little bit about this. Is Obama a racist or not? It's come out lately that, and we're over an hour at this point, but it's come out lately that a lot of people are beginning to believe that Obama is a racist and has been anti-white in his executive orders and many things that he's done. So let's investigate that a little bit more. Also across my desk came about who is the president that has written the most executive orders. I'm seeing conflicting information on this, so I want to look at it a little bit more. But right now, it looks like
the 900 is inaccurate. He's in line with every previous president.
I would think so. Of course, he's got 3 years. He's got 3 years more to go, and as you know, most of the executive orders are always written in the last 2 weeks of a president's term. That's when he'll write the most of them. But anyway, there's many things for us to discuss next week about, and I really hope that you have an opportunity to come on back next week, watch our show. Please hit that donate button. We really need the help. And thank you very much for watching Opinion versus Pinion. This is Rob Cherning, Old Guy Tech TV, News 44 for Jonathan and John. We'll see you next week.